Very good. So today I welcome Helen Key from Sydney, Australia, to speak with us about her Key Health approach.
Right. Oh, okay. Okay. So I'd like to thank Heather for inviting me to speak and this opportunity to share my experiences with you. A little of my background. I'm just a mum. I had a child with a problem. You know, the sort of kid I mean. Hard to explain, but as a mum, you know, things are just not right. Where she was good, she was very good, but when she battled, life was hard for her, and no amount of encouragement, punishment, deprivation of treats changed anything.
No.
Medical advice was unhelpful. I was told by my doctor that her only problem was that she was immature and I was neurotic. I was stuck with that diagnosis till I heard of an OT who worked with the FLKs, the funny little kids, as she called them, the kids that no one could explain or offer practical help that didn't involve medication. She gave me the biggest compliment of my life, that I was the expert of my child. She didn't want to know what anyone else said. She just wanted to hear my concerns. We entered her 8-week program and were there for 12 months. My daughter made improvements, but there were still problems. Different help needed to be found. For a number of years, to help my understanding of the problems of many kids like mine, I became very involved in 2 parent support groups, and I stayed involved long after she finished her OT therapy. During this time, I learned so much from other parents who were seeking help with their child, as well as from the wonderful guest speakers from a wide variety of skills and professions who came and shared their knowledge and experience with parents, and were up to date on the latest research and techniques. During this time, I commenced looking at other therapies, including kinesiology, and commenced attending courses to help my understanding of the development of a child. This included understanding the emotional benefits of using the Australian bush flower essences, the bark flower essences, and the shell essences. From the years of experience I had in the support groups and taking my daughter to various professionals all over Sydney and attending numerous courses, I soon learned that parents are concerned was like an iceberg. So much of the problem was unseen, and you couldn't deal with fully helping a child if you didn't work with the unseen stresses in the child's body. Another frustration I had was that no matter how good any professional was, they only knew their own field of expertise and were not aware of any other expertise that could help a child or how it could work efficiently in conjunction with their speciality. To my way of thinking, I'm just going to change this. To my way of thinking, this was the missing link. No one person or profession had all the answers, but their expertise could open the door to the next stage of helping a child. I believe surprising results could be obtained. With this additional knowledge, by 1986, I was so frustrated by the lack of help offered to concerned parents like I had been, that I decided to start my own business to tell parents of other support and techniques that were available that could help their child. With a name like Key, I couldn't waste it, so I called my business Key Health. My aim was to help parents, not work with children. I wasn't qualified for anything like that. I just let the parents know of practical help that was available for their child. I realised this was a huge step as I was not a therapist, but I had something the professional people did not have. I had experience. I lived with one of these children and had been seeking help unsuccessfully for years, and I knew I could really relate to parents in a way that doctors couldn't. These children were not sick, just struggling in a wide variety of ways. With the help of the Department of Small Business and the encouragement of a number of professional people I'd got to know over the years of being involved in support groups, I commenced my business interviewing parents. I did not see the child, just listened to the parents concerned and explored their child's development with them. That's the basis I use when I commence my business, to guide parents by firstly identifying the possible cause of their child's problems and recommend a program of help where each step would build on the previous work done. I do this by discussing with the parents the pregnancy, the birth, the first 12 months, and then the preschool years, the development of the child's gross and fine motor skills, and depending on the age of the child, the difficulties they're having at school, tech, or uni. I found that talking to parents without the child being present, the parents honestly shared their real concerns that often they'd not verbalised before, because whenever they took their child to a specialist, to a specialist, the child was present, and parents were reluctant to say their real concerns with the child in the room. Now, I've got this wonderful cartoon that just explains the whole situation these kids find themselves in.
I
I
hope your
believe
body and brain have spoken to each other for some time.
yeah. I've got a thing in the middle of my screen I can't get rid of, so I'm, oh, hang on, saying at the meeting, yeah, I'm pressing got it on my screen. Yeah, I can't get rid of it. Anyway, I believe the kids are trapped in a whole variety of ways. It's just some of the ways that you'll all be familiar with. So I became a detective. So when I interview the parents, what am I searching for? What clues am I looking for that could be possible reasons for their child's problems? Today, I aim to share with you the areas I pay particular attention to so that I can plan an appropriate program for each individual child. My approach over the years has been slightly changed as my knowledge has increased, and this is a brief summary of the areas I explore when talking to parents. So these are the areas that I find. So I look for possible stress in the structure of the child, the skeletal and muscular systems, the child's gut, any delays in the development of the 5 sensory systems, and are there any of the primitive reflexes retained?
Yeah.
However, before I talk about this list, the first area I wish to share with you that I consider is the child's birth date. When parents contact me, of course, I get the child's name, address, school, and class. I also ask for the child's birth date. Over the years, I've attended a number of courses run by the Australian Bushflower Essences, and luckily for me, most of the lectures I have attended have been run by Ian White, the founder of the Australian Bush Essences, and a brilliant therapist. And I've bought most of his books and subscribed to his newsletter for years. In his first book, The Bushflower Essences, he has a section on numerology and how the birth date can give you a clue as to the inner workings of the child. If you're interested in looking at this field and experiencing this, you commence with an empty grid. Then you put numbers 1 to 9 on the grid. In the system of, so now the next slide, number 8, you put the numbers 1 to 9, that's right. In the system of numerology that Ian uses, it's a Pythagorean system, which is based on the birth date, and it was devised more than 2,500 years ago using a grid and explained in the book, Discovering the Inner Self, by Dr. David Phillips. Now, in his book, he divides the grid into 15 arrows. Down to slide 10. So if 3 arrows appear or do not appear in a straight line, it's known as an arrow. And it's an indicative of significant strengths or weaknesses. And these arrows can run either horizontally, vertically, or diagonally. To use this technique, each number of the birth date is written in a specific place. Now, for the next slide, particularly for example, if you're working on the birth date, the 16th of March 2004, you would express this as 16-3-2004, with each of the numerals be written down in a specific place on the grid. There's no place for zeros. While I'm not into numerology, 1 year early in my development, I made a list of all my clients' birthdays, and using this model, I found that over 80% of the children I was working with at that time had a common feature, the arrow of frustration, which is when the numbers 4, 5, and 6 are not in the birth date. And I still find that the majority of the kids that I work with do not have those numbers in a straight line in their birth date. The other arrows that regularly come up are the arrows of poor memory when 3, 6, and 9 there, or well, not there, or the arrow of hyperactivity when 7, 8, and 9 is an arrow, and those 3 numbers are there. Ian has found some specific essences that are often beneficial to these children, and the 15 arrows he based his work on, I found very helpful. And in his book, The Happy Healthy Kids, he explains which bush essences would be appropriate for a child with a particular arrow? Of course, it's not, of course, the whole answer, but it can be a helpful clue when understanding the child. Now, I prefer this birth grid before the parent comes. I rarely bring it to their attention. It's just to help me in understanding their child better, guide me the questions I ask, particularly, if there are frustrations there, I listen for where the parents feel their child is frustrated and what frustrates them with working with the child, so that we can work out the best way to help the child. Any questions so far? Nope. Okay.
Can we play with that for a minute? So if we do our birth dates in that 1, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 6, 5, 4, 7, 8, 9. I'll just go back to that slide.
Each number, yeah. So if you can see with your own birth dates, if you've got an arrow, if you want to play with it.
I have the arrow of determination.
I'm not sure how you write. Do you start with your?
You write your day you're born, for argument's sake, 23rd. You write 2 and 3, and then you write your month number, and then you write your year. And with us, it'd all be 19 something or other.
19. Yeah. Okay.
So you do put 1, 9 in as well?
Yes. Yes.
And you put, if you've got zeros, like I'm 20 and September
you don't worry about the 0. You just leave the 0 out.
So you've got that pattern there. So I'm not sure how you attach your particular numbers to it. You just highlight the ones you've got.
Yes, just write the numbers in the grid. For example, like slide 11, Heather, if you would mind going to slide 11 again.
Yep.
That's just the numbers for that birth date.
So we put our numbers in where you showed us on slide 8.
On slide 8 is where all the numbers go. And then slide 11, it's an example of how you would demonstrate the 16th of March, 16/3 to 2004.
And if we've got 2 numbers,
you write 2. If you've got 2 2s, you write 2. You write 2 2.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Okay, but what about 19? Do we put the?
You write 1 and 9.
So we have to put the 9 in. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So I've got one right across the middle of mine.
Okay.
Interesting. But procrastination, is it?
Helen, can I ask a question?
Yep.
My birthday is the 19th of January, 1954. So I've actually got 3 1s.
All right.
Lines of 5 and 4.
Yep.
So what's that mean?
Okay. Okay. In his book, David Phillips' book, now I'm going to hold up my copy. It's a very old copy. There's a recent re-edition being done. In his book, he explains what 3 1s in your birth date means, or what each number means. But I say I'm not really into numerology, and this book was first written in 1980, so it's a bit out of date in some things. I just use it for the arrows, and I find it helpful and interesting. If you want to go in, it's just interesting. My mother-in-law was a very challenging lady, and her birth date was 1910, 1919.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. And I went to myself, oh dear, that explains it. So each number has a significance. The more numbers you have, like you have 2 2s or whatever, it can mean something. And if you really want to go into it, I'd encourage you to invest in the book, which you can purchase through the Australian Bushflowers website.
Mm-hmm.
And just Google Australian Bushflowers, and they have a shop, and they're now stocking the most recent edition of this book. And so it's just one avenue that I use. just to help me understand the child. I don't go into it too deeply because that's not my thing, but it's with a name like Key, it's one of the keys I use.
Interesting.
You can't waste a name like that. When I got engaged, one of the girls I worked with said, "What's your married name going to be?" And I said, "Key." She said, "Oh, Helen's found a key to happiness." And I thought that was really sweet.
Interesting.
Okay, we'll keep moving on. So we're up to slide 4. Yep, sorry. You happy to move on?
Yeah.
So what if there's not a line? What if you've got something that's not a line?
Oh, that's all right. It's just all different parts of your character. And that's where buying, if you want to look at the book and get all the details. And if not, just be aware of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so this one's 26/11/1997, 1998, which is not a line anywhere. There's
No,
3
that's all right.
1s and 2 9s.
Yeah, that's great. That means you've got lots of good qualities. If you have your numbers scattered, it's good qualities.
Good.
Enjoy that.
I will.
And it's actually interesting because now we're in the year 2000s. The majority of all the kids I've worked with lately are all born this century. A lot of them don't have a 9 in their number. But 2 is a special number for harmony. So hopefully with more kids being born with 2, every child has to have a 2 in their number, the world might become a better place in time.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, let's move on. So let's talk about structure. This has become another essential tool, another key that I use, especially in my relationship when I work with the kids. And by structure, I mean the skeletal system, 206 bones in the body. So slide 16, Heather, please. Slide 16. Yep. And the muscular system, and of course most muscles are attached to 2 bones. So when I talk about structure, I mean both the skeletal and muscular systems. So what I want to share with you is what made me stop and consider this clue. When I commenced Key Health, I only ever met the parents. I didn't see the child. In fact, the information they shared with me, I get a pretty good idea of where some of the child's frustrations could be based. Soon after I commenced Key Health, my mum brought a photo of her daughter to me, showing me when she came for interview. She told me on the phone when she made her booking, her daughter was stressed. Okay, I understood that. When she showed me the photo, there was red all around the child's mouth, as though she just had a red ice block or a hamburger with lots of tomato sauce and had a dirty face. Now, I didn't comment, but I thought, why did she bring such a photo? The mum said, "You can see how red she is around the lips. She's so tense. She licks her lips so often. She's licked all the skin off her lips." I thought I knew tense, but that really opened my eyes. And from then I asked parents to bring a photo of their child. And this has become an invaluable tool. For a long time, I also encouraged parents to bring various photos of their children at different ages. And I often see an area of concern that was repeated in each photo. Not so much the redness around the lips, that was a once only, but the position of their heads, were their ears straight, were their legs straight. These possible problems were often evident from the first photo of the baby sitting up, the preschool photos, the first day of school photos, sports activity photos, whatever they brought. Now, with the ease of technology, I ask parents to take photos of their child in their swimming costume and send them to me by email prior to their first appointment. I ask them to take the photo, a full frontal view, a full back view, and a close-up of their head. It's amazing what I notice when I look at these photos. So what am I looking for? In the photos they send me, I'm really looking at possible structural problems. Why? The skeletal system is the hardware of the body. Everything else is a software. And we all know how important the efficient, smoothly operating hardware is for our computers. So it is for our bodies. I'm about to show you 2 photos that are old photos that I took of 2 brothers when they came for their initial assessment. These photos were taken prior to me asking parents to send photos via email of their children in their swimming costume. And I'm using these photos as I have permission from the boy's mum to use them. And I want to show you what I look for in the photos. So photo 19, the photo of young Nicholas. You can see his head is not sitting on his neck properly. His ears are uneven. His shoulders are uneven. Elbows are uneven. The arms are uneven. And his knees are uneven. He was a mess. And then his younger brother, the next one, slide 20, young Jonathan, you can see his head's out of alignment, the ears, the shoulders, the neck. I particularly put this photo in because look at that left leg. Look how crooked that is. With his hips and his knee out of alignment and his leg, the muscles in that lower part of his leg all tight and the ankle bent. He is now a master carpenter. But he came, that's what he looked like. And this is where I find the work of chiropractors and musculoskeletal therapists essential. How can a child control their body, whether it's in sport or schoolwork or exercises, including the brain gym exercises, if their body is out of alignment? So why do I pay so much attention to these areas, skeletal and muscular system? As I said, as I look at the photos of the child, I can see so many reasons. And when assessing the child, I look specifically at these possible problems and show the parents the child where the blockages are. Now, about this time, I commenced being trained to work with children, not just interview the parents. And I trained in extra lesson program, brain gym, vision circles, sensory integration, touch for health, primitive reflexes, and rhythmic movement, to name just a few. And once I actually started working with the children, I soon realised if they had structural or muscular problems, they often had major problems doing the exercises that they needed to overcome their problems. And this, of course, included the brain gym exercises. I'm asking you, how often do you have children who battle using big arms or to lift their legs when doing the cross crawl, or have trouble doing the elephant neck rolls and arm activation, to name just a few? I found that after a child sees either a muscular therapist or a chiropractor or both, these exercises are done so much more easily, and the child is more willing to do them for home play, and improvements happen. And that's noticed by both the child and the parent. Now, an area of the skeletal system, slide 21, an area of the skeletal system you can't identify by photos is the cranial system. So down to 22, please, Heather.
One more.
Oh, no, sorry, up to 21. Sorry, 21, go up to 20. So back to 21. Sorry, I was on the wrong one. There are 29 bones in the cranium, and there's a hierarchy of movement. And after birth, the cranial bones should settle into the position which allows movement to still occur. 22, the micro movement, which is an involuntary movement is between 0.125 millimeters and 0.25 millimeters, and it's constant till we die. These very subtle but very important movements allow the cerebral spinal fluid that is pumped up and down the spine to flow to all parts of our brain and through our nervous system. Now, this unfortunately, unfortunately, the majority of children I see strongly suspect cranial problems, and I refer them to an osteopath trained in craniosacral osteopathy. Now, you can see on this picture there's 3 pumps. The first pump is under the cerebellum. The second pump is C1, and where the occiput sits on C1, and the third pump is the base of the spine. And I find, muscle testing these 3 areas, I find out if the cerebral spinal fluid is being pumped through smoothly and efficiently. Okay. And this is where I find discussion about the birth of the child during the initial interview so terribly important. It's important to be aware if the child was born by suction and had a cone-shaped head at birth. It's been my experience that the cranial bones are badly misaligned. This specialised skill is essential. With appropriate help, amazing improvements in most aspects of the child are obvious. One of my main concerns is that the misaligned cranial bones can affect a child's vision, and it's obvious that good vision is essential for learning. If a child had a difficult delivery, for example, slow progress through the birth canal, forceps delivery, or a caesarean section, there's a good chance the bones around the eye sockets could be out of alignment. The muscles of the eyes are attached to these bones, Therefore, it can be difficult for the eyes to coordinate when these bones are not correctly placed and move freely. I commonly find that children born after a difficult delivery cannot smoothly track with their eyes, doing a lazy 8 or brain buttons, earth buttons, and space buttons. A simple realignment of these tiny bones either side of the eyes can make a huge difference. I always encourage my parents to make sure there are no cranial restrictions around the eye sockets before they have their child's eyes tested by a behavioural optometrist. Any questions? Anything I can help anyone with? No? Good. Next area we're going to look at is the gut. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this as I'm not really qualified. I just want to bring it to your attention that during fetal development, one part of the embryo tissue turns into your central nervous system, which is composed of the brain, the spinal cord, while the other part develops into your gastrointestinal tract. And latest research has found that 70% of the neurotransmitters found in the brain are also found in the gut. Your gut literally serves as your second brain. This is an area that often has to be considered. Okay, we'll keep moving on. The next area I'm going to explore is the central nervous system. The 5 sensory systems are tactile, the proprioception, the visual, auditory, and vestibular. They're called the central nervous system. And these 5 sensory systems process their messages through the spinal cord to the brain. Again, emphasising the importance of a fully functional spine and spinal cord. I'm sure you're all aware of the 5 sensory systems, but I'll quickly go through each one briefly, commencing with the vestibular system. And I'm sure you'll soon see how all these systems work together. So the vestibular system, it integrates the messages from our eyes and ears and the muscles to give a sense of balance. Where is the vestibular nerve? Nestled within the inner ear. The vestibular system detects shifts in our body's position, whether it's spinning, swinging, or merely turning the head. And this system is on high alert. In essence, it acts as our internal gyroscope, keeping tabs on gravity, movement, and spatial orientation. It's responsible for tonic muscle control, which is necessary for a child to hold the body still in a variety of positions, sitting at desk, standing still in the queue. This is where I find the work of musculoskeletal therapists so important. A child can't stay still if their muscles are too tight or too weak. Now, both vision and hearing are dependent on the vestibular system apparatus for their function. And the vestibular plays an important role in learning, that more than 30 different learning difficulties have been linked to a vestibular imbalance. One of the brain gym exercises to stimulate the system is balance buttons. But I found that if the muscles in the child's feet are out of alignment and not functioning well, or their ankles are out of alignment, they get little benefit from this exercise. This is where the skill of a musculoskeletal therapist is invaluable. An exercise I use regularly to help the vestibular system, which is not a brain gym exercise, is to have a child balance walking on a pool noodle. So it's those long plastic noodles that they take the pool. First of all, I have the child walking on it, going side to side, from left to right, with neither the toes or the heel touching the floor. And they often can go one way, but they can't take their body back the other way. And when they can do that, then we do heel-toe. It's a fun exercise. The pool noodles are $2.50 at Big W and Kmart, so it's not an expensive piece of equipment. And if they fall off, they don't fall far. So, and it's lots of fun. Lots of fun.
That's great.
Yeah. So the next area I look at is the proprioception, the internal sense of the physical self. Our proprioception doesn't begin at birth. It develops over time as the sensory system matures. Proprioception problems can often be traced to difficulty in one or more of the developmental stages. And proprioceptors are found in the joints, tendons, ligaments, muscles, nerve endings of the inner ear. The proprioception system allows us to do everything. It enables us to know where parts of our body are at any time. A child's inability to motor plan and develop age-appropriate skills can be frustrating and often lead to behavioural problems that carry over into all aspects of their life. And I'm sure you've all worked with kids who found great difficulty organising their body to do their brain gym exercises. Developmentally, the input from the proprioceptors, muscles, joints, etc., is processed primarily through the vestibular system. I'm going to sound like a bit like a broken record, I'm afraid. The next system is a tactile, the sense of touch on the skin. Now, this is so important as touch precedes both hearing and vision as the primary source of learning. It's a major source of information about the environmental conditions, and it warns us of danger. Low muscle tone often results in low muscle planning as the child gets poor information through the tactile system, hence the benefit of stress in the muscles being released. Brain gym exercises, the vision gym exercises, bracelets and rings, the cocoon and the caterpillar are all helpful exercises for the tactile system. The next system we're going to look at is the auditory system, the learned skill of acquiring meaning of what's been learned. Auditory and listening are not the same. Hearing is natural, listening is learned. The next lovely picture, lovely cartoon, a man following directions. I'm sure we've all had this experience. And I go back, Heather, 41. Oh, you're on, sorry, yeah. Dr. Dennison, we all have worked with kids and know people like this. Dr. Dennison says that listening and memory are tied into the proprioceptors in our neck and shoulder muscles, which respond to sound by repositioning. When under stress, the neck muscles tension tends to shut down the listening reflex, and we experience difficulty in speech, language, comprehension, memory, and thinking. Hence the importance of ensuring the neck and shoulder muscles can freely move to gain benefit of the brain gym exercises. The next system we're going to look at is vision. Sight and vision are not the same. Sight is the ability to see clearly at any distance. Vision is the ability to interpret and understand the information that comes through our eyes. Less than 10% of the process of vision occurs in the eyes. More than 90% of vision takes place in the brain and from association with touch and proprioception. And we have absolutely no idea of how our children are seeing. We can't see through their eyes. They could be colourblind. They might have blurred vision. They might have eye teaming problems.
Yes, I do.
And of course, passing the Snell test doesn't give an indication of the ability a child has to see clearly at the reading and writing distance. They need a far more thorough test. This is where behavioural optometrists are so important. Now, this picture of the duck is one of my favourite pictures. Ask a child to tell me what they're seeing, and what I'm asking them to tell me if it's a duck, a pelican, a swan, anything feathered. If they tell me it's a dog or a rabbit, I'm worried. It means they're reading much to left. And it's interesting, I was working with a little boy who was elective mute. His language was coming, but I asked him to tell me, he was only 4, I asked him to tell me what that picture was, and he told me it was a quack. So I knew he was seeing it as a bird, so it was quite exciting. Both vision and hearing are dependent on the vestibular system for their functioning. I hope you're getting the picture, or I'm sure you're getting the picture now, how important it is to make sure the central nervous system is fully functional because it works together. Now, I've already mentioned the importance of making sure the very small bones on either side of the eye sockets are in place, as the eye muscles are attached to these bones and greatly affect a child's ability to track. 2 other aspects I found over the years to consider when checking a child's vision skills are the frames of the glasses and the colour of the frames. If a child's going to have their eyes examined by a behavioural optometrist and possibly be given glasses with support lenses, I encourage the parents to get plastic frame glasses, as with some children, the metal crossing the midline can cause problems. I usually have an old pair of metal frame glasses and plastic frame glasses without lenses, and I muscle test the child wearing these frames to identify if there's any stress with the metal frames. And I found lately that the colour of the frames can affect a child's vision, especially frames that have the shade of red in them, a straight pink, a red or a pink or a purple, which is obviously especially popular with little girls. It doesn't have to be the whole frame. I had a boy recently whose glasses had a red stripe in them on the inside of the frames. He muscle tested weak wearing his glasses, even though the script was correct. Another experience I've had with vision is how pierced ears can affect a child's reading ability. The acupuncture point on the ear is in the earlobe, just about where the piercing is often done. I had a little girl who was a poor reader. One day I asked her to read an age-appropriate book with reasonable size print. She stumbled, misread words, jumped to the wrong line when reading. I had a thought and asked her to take out her earrings and read the next page in the book. To everyone's amazement, she read perfectly. She put the earrings back in and read the next page, making lots of errors again.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was her choice whether she should wear earrings again and yet. But the sad thing was she just had a birthday and had been given some pretty new earrings. So what the mum did was took her and bought her some rings. And I said, rings are better. You can see the rings. You can't see the earrings. Another aspect of a pierced ear I'd like to just share with you. I had a boy I worked with, and he was a champion marathon runner. So good he trained at the Olympic running site. He always did well, but he felt he could do better. So we did some appropriate brain gym exercises with that goal. And just out of curiosity, we did the same exercises after he took his one earring out. He could do all the exercises much better and more smoothly. I challenged him to take his earring out when he did his next training session, just to see if it made a difference. He had trouble telling me, but he ran his PB with his earring out.
Yeah, okay.
So I left it to him to decide what he was going to do in the future. So I hope you can see, I'm sure you can, how these 5 sensory systems are both essential to be working well, and a clear message to the brain through the spine and the spinal cord is necessary. Do we have any questions? So I've just gone for the last section. No,
I've got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the vestibular, you were talking about the feet. So would the foot flex help from a brain gym point of view?
I don't see why not. I don't see why, because that's working on the muscles in the feet. So yes, it'd certainly be worth, if you had a child you're working with had a vestibular problem, it's certainly worth doing those exercises.
And even the movement re-ed on the feet from educating depth.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Language of
Definitely.
movement. Yeah.
Just an observation. I had one ear. I've got earrings, 2 earrings in one ear. The other ear the earring was ripped out, and I don't wear any. Very interesting. I'm going to do a few experiments.
That's all you can do. Yes.
She's taking her earrings out of that ear for now.
Yes, and go for 24 hours and just see what's different. And then when you put them back, just do one at a time. Don't do them both.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, and if you do whatever you decide, if you retest putting the second earring in and then the first earring, put it in different order and see if that makes it. I don't know.
No, and I suspect it would be different for different individuals.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I've had a lot of kids, a lot of little girls with pierced ears, and it's made absolutely no difference. But to that one particular little girl, it was gigantic, the difference it made. She'd been to, before she saw me, she'd been to a very bad behavioural optometrist and done hours and hours of work at her program. with her eyes. She did have pink glasses. We changed the frames and that made a difference. We got the correct script and her reading improved, but and then just that one day I just got a gut feeling and I thought, just do me a favour and take your earrings out. And she did. And I mean, she was staggered how easy it was to read, and so was her mum. And as I said, when we put the earrings back in, she read the next page in the same book, so it was the same characters and words and, you know, way of writing, etc. She couldn't read it again. So then she had beautiful rings and no earrings. And she still doesn't wear earrings, obviously. Yes. As I say, I've had other kids I've asked to take the earrings out and muscle test it, but they haven't been happy about it, but it hasn't made a difference. Great, go ahead. But that acupuncture point is so individual in each person's ear and earlobe, and I would imagine it's could be very different or slightly different from left to right here. So muscle test, it's an easy way to find out. Yeah.
And
Have
also
you
the
noticed
quality
anything
of,
about?
Sorry.
Have you noticed anything about tongue rings or nose rings?
Anything on the midline's a worry. Belly button.
Yes, anything on the midline, particularly your navel. You don't get your navel because the Chinese regard your navel as your heart. You don't pierce your heart. Yes.
Break your heart.
Luckily, I've never had anyone with earrings in the nose or ear, and the nose or the tongue, but I'd certainly be challenging them. Well, I don't think those people come to me.
Yeah. Well, I've got another question because I work with the tweeners. You're working a lot with children, and I acknowledge that, and that's great. The
and
tweeners
teenagers
sort of have different opinions about all of those things too. But I've got a gentleman who's just turned 70, and I'm interested in what you were talking about, the movement of the cranium bones as pushing the fluid up and down the spine.
Yep.
Could you just talk a little bit more just about that, how important that is, the bones and the structures in the head and things?
I found it essential. Each bone has a hierarchy of movement, and there's 40 movements a minute in the cranial bones. It's a big thing, and they are so subtle. They are so subtle. And you really need someone that is trained in this. I had this wonderful man that I use that was trained in the London Osteopathic Hospital for Children, a whole hospital for kids. And he's just amazing. And he looks like he's asleep. He's just holding your head, and you don't feel anything. But when you finished your half-hour session, you feel so good. And the difference it's made to the kids is quite amazing, that we've got to get that fluid pumping smoothly, and it can't pump smoothly if the bones, even if the pump is working, it doesn't work properly if the bones in the skull are out of alignment. Yeah.
So I've got two people that I'm thinking of that I've worked with. One is a girl at 17, had a horrific accident and is lucky to be alive, that had most of her skull crushed, and so it was very damaged. And then this other gentleman who went through again a windscreen in the front of the car when he was 17 as well. And the damage to the skulls and things probably more manifest as they get older. Are there people around that you recommend people to go to for head massage?
A cranial sacral osteopath. So Google cranial sacral osteopath. And it's interesting, when I was 17, I was crossing the road in a pedestrian crossing, and I was hit by a Volkswagen. And I went up the bonnet through the roof, through the windscreen, through the roof. And needless to say, I had major cranial problems. And no one did anything about that. I was still alive, so that was okay. When I was doing all this work, I did sound therapy a long time ago, and didn't get any benefit of it. And then I went to someone that was trained in cranial sacral work, who also understood the auditory system, and he said, this feels like a head that's done auditory work. but with your bones out of alignment, it was a waste of time. I said, tell me about it.
Oh, wow.
So if I want a child to have sound therapy, and I do recommend the Simona sound therapy to a lot of children with auditory problems, to get their cranial bones checked first, particularly around the ear socket, and obviously in the occipital, because it's behind the occipital is the auditory part of the brain. Yeah, I just find
Makes so much sense.
Yeah, I just find it
sense.
so important to get that basis done. And once it's done properly, it should be right for the rest of your life, unless, boys being boys, they do things like play cricket and get bangs on the head, or they tackle in football. And yeah, well, I can't help boys. But on the whole, my little grandson was falling over a lot. We've got that sorted out now. We're getting his muscles in his feet and everything done. But he needs to see the cranial osteopath about every 6 months, because he's into soccer and bouncing balls that are getting heavier as he's getting older off his head. And he's just an active boy. If there's he went for a nasty, he was riding on his skateboard and the skateboard hit a crack in the footpath. The board kept going and he went head first. So a daughter had to take him back to the cranial osteopath, and all the bones around the eye socket were thrown out. But one visit, we got it fixed. And that's the exciting thing. We've got someone that knows what they're doing. It is dramatic, the difference it can make. Yeah. Does someone else have a question? No.
My question about the earrings and things is, what about the quality of the metal? Because you've also got some that are, say, pure silver, and then others that aren't.
That's an excellent question, Heather, and I've never explored that, but it'd certainly be worth exploring. But I really think it's more the piercing in the ear than the quality of the metal, but it could certainly be, and if you find it a problem, and you have people that have different quality, muscle test them and see if the pure silver's okay and the cheap ones aren't. I don't know, but with muscle testing, it's so easy to do. And I think that's the most accurate way. I mean, we muscle test everything. We go in the supermarket, want to try a new brand. We buy plants. We muscle test the plants. Buy clothes. We muscle test. If it's, there's two choices, which one to choose. But it's a wonderful skill to be able to have. And then it's funny, because of my legs, I can't stand long to cook. My husband does most of the cooking. If he's not sure if something's on or off, or it's okay to be eaten or not, he'll come out and hold the container and says, Tess, is this okay to eat tonight or not? And yeah. Okay, let's move on to this last area that I want to cover very briefly today, is the retained reflexes. I'm sure we're all aware of the primitive reflexes, that they're a set of survival reflexes that appear in the early stages of a child's life and development. And they're designed to help us survive the early stages. And I'm sure many of you have done Claire Hocking's course on this topic. And babies work through their reflexes in this first 12, 18 months of their life. So they're lying on their back, rocking backwards and forwards, and that inhibits the Moro reflex. And they start crawling on all fours, and that inhibits the ATNR. They start trying to stand and stretch, and they inhibit the ATNR, or the STNR and the TLR. And then they're off, and the postural reflexes take over. But when the baby's crawling, there's three, ideally for 6 months or longer, there's three major areas that develop when the baby's crawling. And I pay particular attention when I talk to the parents at the interview. How did your baby crawl? Did they cry on all fours? Did they bottom hop? Did they crawl with one leg tucked under? How did they crawl? Because when a baby crawls on their hands and knees, the eyes the distance to the floor that they will be their desk. So they're crawling around playing with their cars or whatever. They hear a noise, they look up, it's a telephone, it's a dog barking, it's mum doing something boring, back to what they're playing with. And that gets their eyes to the muscles of the eyes to be able to look at the distance and come down to something close. That backwards and forwards movement is so important, particularly in the good old days when they used to copy off the blackboard. Now they've got the screen. it's still got to go from having the screen down to paper and finding the line on the paper to write and write to the margin to the side of the page. A lot of these kids can't do that. When the baby crawls for about 6 months, they get over 800 hours of weight bearing on their hands. And of course, that's necessary for your fine motor skills to develop. And of course, when they crawl, left arm, right leg, etc., it's starting to break in the ATNR, the vertical midline, which takes to about age 7 fully integrated. So let's quickly go through the list of primitive reflexes. So the first one on the list is the fear paralysis, and it does exactly what it says. It paralyzes a child with fear. And I found often if a child has a fear paralysis reflex, the diaphragm is trapped, which of course can affect their breathing, that can affect concentration, all sorts of other problems. The Moro reflex is the fight or flight child, often diagnosed as ADD or ADHD. Palmar reflex, if they've still retained that, they have weak hands and fingers and interferes with the development of their fine motor skills. The infant plantar, feet, weak toes and feet, and affects vestibular. Working on the muscles is so important. The ATNR is poor integration of the left and right sides of the body, with trouble crossing the midline. And of course, that affects your reading, spelling, writing, getting dressed, sport, so many factors. Spinal gland is an irritation in the spinal cord. They can't sit still or put their back against a chair, and they're often bedwetters. Tonic labyrinthine, TLR, the tonic labyrinthine reflex involves the vestibular and more poor muscle tone, poor balance, toe walking, difficulty sitting still, and often the W sitters, when they sit with their legs the wrong way. The sucking reflex, if it's retained, often the TMJ, the temporomandibular joint, is out of alignment and can affect their articulation as they start talking. The rooting is usually cranial issues, and they can dribble, be messy eating because they eat with their mouth open. They chew pencils and objects when trying to concentrate. The back, the feet muscles, if that reflex is still retained, there's involuntary movement of the mouth and tongue. And again, can be seen in eating disorders and tension in the jaw. And the STNR, poor posture. They're unable to concentrate for a long time. And they're poor swimmers. They can't work their arms and legs to move simultaneously. So in summary, what we've talked about today, the 5 areas that I explore, we've got the birth date, the structure, the gut, the central nervous system, and the possibility of the primitive reflexes being retained. I trust I've given you food for thought. Happy to answer. I'm happy to answer some questions. And good luck with the wonderful work you're doing with the kids in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. Are there
My
any
pleasure.
questions from the group? Catherine?
Put them all into information overload. Sorry about that.
No.
Unmute, Catherine.
Catherine.
Unmute.
Thank you very much, Helen.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate that. That was great. What was the name of the book again, which is to work out the numerology with Ian White's Australian Bushflowers?
Okay. The book is called Happy Healthy Kids.
Right.
That's the book. No, not that book, Heather. Yeah, number 13. Yes. And he talks about each of the arrows and the essences he recommends for each of the specific arrows. And again, I muscle tested, but it gives me an idea. And when you get familiar with the arrows, with the different essences, you really think, oh yes, rough bluebell, that would be obvious for that child, or bush fuchsia. Bush fuchsia is for integration of left and right hemispheres, and it ties in with frustration.
Okay.
Oh,
And
stuff. Yeah,
you found that to
it's-
be really
it's-
effective.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent book, and you can just support it through the website.
Hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
That's good.
And that's for all age children, teenagers.
Oh, yes,
Because
yes.
it says there
Everyone.
7.
Well, it's this book is particularly written from conception to age 7. With the older children, there's obviously more complicated emotional issues. But as you get familiar with the essences, I work with the child, and I do a lot of muscle testing. I have the box of my 69 essences there, and I muscle test the ones that are obvious, and is there anything else? And get the child to actually hold the bottle and test if it's appropriate, and test how many drops and how many times a day.
Sometimes it's tricky to muscle test children.
Yes.
So you
The first thing you've got to do is check that they're hydrated. Usually by the time you get to muscle testing, I find they're dehydrated. So before I test, I make sure child and myself are hydrated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Could you repeat what you said about the connection between gut and brain? Is it because they are developed in the same period?
They develop in the same period and the same neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters are developed, obviously in utero, and 70% of them go to the brain, and the other 30% go to the gut. So they're exactly the same neurotransmitters, apparently. That's been the latest research just in the last 12 months, 2 years that I've been reading about, that people were unaware of before. And it's interesting. So I know when I first had to help my daughter, I had to explore gut issues, and we had to do an elimination diet. And one of the biggest problems with the majority of these children is cow's milk. If they have a lot of throat or ear infections, if they get a lot of throat or ear infections, often they're intolerant to cow's milk. And if they get throat infections, usually C1 is out of alignment. And if they get the ear infections, usually C2 is out of alignment. So we get that looked at before we even consider doing any surgery. And, you know, doctors are very reluctant these days to take tonsils out or put grommets in the ears, which is good, but you can't keep the kids on antibiotics all the time because they keep getting infected. You find out why, and it can be dietary, and it can be a structure problem.
Could you please repeat the C1 and C2 connection?
Yep, C1 is tonsillitis, the throat. C2 is the ears and infected ears.
Interesting. Quite often, my C1 and C2 are totally out of alignment. Basically, my head isn't on my shoulders. And I have noticed that when I'm not, there's lots of ears and throat going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I found it important to explore the muscles in the neck as well as having the bones adjusted. You can go to a chiropractor and they can adjust C1 and C2, but they're held in place by very strong muscles. And after the body relaxes, the muscles go, oh, I don't like being here, and put the bones back into the incorrect position.
Yeah, they just jump back in.
Correct. So that's why I like having someone who really understands the massage. I start with kids with massage, with people that can massage the neck and understand the neck muscles before we look at the chiropractic adjustment.
We have few services in this part of regional Australia, and
I know.
To find anyone, actually, I have a delightful kinesiologist, an applied kinesiologist and a chiropractor. And whenever I am off in any way, shape or form, it is that my cranial is out of whack.
Yep.
He said, and I found it useful because we have through brain gym ways of balancing the sphenoid. He said the sphenoid, the little butterfly that sits, he said that's the first indicator that you're getting short circuits.
Yep.
And if you know, and if you can then get if you can balance your sphenoid, often the cranial structure doesn't need much more work.
Correct. Yes, yes. And the sphenoid, not many people can work on that because it's inside the head. You can't actually touch it externally.
You can just imagine
And it can affect your vision as well. Yeah.
it does. Yeah, I know when mine's going, and I try to make an appointment.
Yeah. But the fact that it keeps going, there's something else going on.
Yeah, so I probably need I need to make a visit to wherever you are and see your guy. No, I'm serious. I'm pushing 70 and it's frustrating.
Yes. Well, I'd love to see
I
you,
hear
but I
there's a
can't.
good-
Sorry. I was saying I'd love to see you, but I can't offer you a bed. We don't have spare bed.
Oh no, that's
Yeah, Ruth.
absolutely no drama. I just need to. Heather, you have some contacts, don't you? Some contact details for Helen?
Oh, yes. But the email address is keyhelp@bigpond.com.
Key help all one at Big Pond.
Yeah, keyhelp's one word, @bigpond.com.
Yep.
My brother has a fantastic massage and chiropractic service in Shepparton that they seem to have what you're talking about, Helen, with all of the services in the one building and
Excellent.
all connected.
Well, that's
Yes.
not too far from Kate in comparison.
It's only
Well, yeah.
4.5 hours.
Well, that's closer.
Where is
It's
he?
closer than Sydney.
I do teach various things in capital cities, so
We'll keep that in mind.
you got to, yeah, we'll see.
Are there any other questions for Helen? Just thank you so much, Helen, for all those wise words.
My pleasure. It's a pleasure to share it, and I hope that I've given you some food for thought as you work with children now. As this approach I've taken the last 30-odd years, no, it doesn't work with every child because we have individual kids and uncooperative parents and et cetera, but where it works beautifully. Getting that structure right and working with the central nervous system and tying in with the brain gym and all the movement exercises. It's an exciting journey. And thank you, ladies, for giving up time on a Saturday afternoon.
Thank you for giving your time, and it was amazing, so enlightening. Yeah,
My
thank
pleasure.
you.
My pleasure. And any of you want to contact me by, my email, keyhelp@bigpond.com. A few months down the track, if you get a question or a bright idea, I'm happy to help you or send you anything that might help you. Any of the, after I've finished all this, remembered I found, hold on, this picture of all the acupuncture points in the ear.
Mm.
Wow.
And even looking at that, it's pretty revealing of what's available. Yep. But I love the bush flower essences. They work beautifully with the kids. So thank you, ladies. And again,
Thank you,
it's my
Helen.
pleasure. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you, Heather.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.